Nice.
Hey fam, welcome to another episode of Good, Bad, and Ugly about real estate with Jose. Got a great guest, a very special guest to me for you all today. Got Matt, one of my mentors. Woo! How's it going today, Matt?
Good. How are you, Jose? Thanks for having me.
Pretty good. I'm grateful that you made time for me. I know you're a busy person. Just for the audience, I've met Matt way back in 2021. Trying to find new ways to invest in real estate. Most of the people, he has a training program that I entered, and most of those people have came and went. I'm still with him because he's constantly finding new ways to invest, kind of reinventing himself, which I'm sure he'll share with you in the story. But nonetheless, I'm going to stop talking about him, let him talk about himself. So Matt, take it away.
Talk about myself. Yeah, I mean, just how I started was, I was in the Marine Corps. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I spent the next 15 years in the music business. And then the whole digital download thing came along and put me out of business. So I had to start life over again. I was 34 years old, and that was quite the shocker. And especially after you've made a lot of money and now you're not making any money. Sometimes I think it would have been better to never have made any money at all. It wouldn't have been as bad.
Right.
But yeah, so I had to start life over. Didn't know how to do anything. Wasn't certified to do anything. Wasn't qualified per my job searches. I had no degree, no certifications, no credentials, no nothing. And so after going through a bunch of different types of different sales jobs and temp jobs, and what was the other type of job? Oh, a bunch of multi-level marketing type things, ended up bagging groceries. And so that's basically where life started. I was there for about 6 months. And the grocery store manager, who happened to be a real estate investor on the side, showed me what he had done. And I was like, okay, I think that's what I want to do, because I really missed my money.
Right.
So I knew I had to learn something new. So I was like, well, whatever I learn new, I want to make sure it pays a lot. And that was kind of my choice and the reason for real estate. And he had said these words to me. He said, real estate, it's the final frontier where the average person has a legitimate shot at creating real wealth. And at that point in my life, I was searching. I didn't know what I was going to do. So he said the final frontier. I was like, okay, well, I guess I found it. Here it is. Yeah. Said for the average person. And at that point, being 34 years old, bagging groceries, I felt far below average.
Right.
And he said to create real wealth. And I was like, okay, let's do some real wealth this time. So that's what got me into real estate.
And how did you start? What did you decide? How did you decide to start your? Let me take a step back, because I know this about you.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't just start investing; you got yourself licensed, correct?
Yep.
And be an agent.
I did. That's where I thought I was supposed to start. I mean, I think that's where everybody that doesn't have any real awareness about real estate investing kind of thinks, oh, you go become an agent or you go get a license. And so I didn't really have any direction at that point. So that's just what I did. And, it took me a few years to figure out, I am helping people buy and sell real estate, but I'm not buying or selling anything on my own.
Right.
And, then I had a couple clients, they were investors, and they gave me a repeat business over and over again. And I was able to compare one day the closing statements and kind of look at what they made versus in profit versus what I made in commissions. I was like, you know what? I'm sitting on the wrong side of the desk. I need to be over there getting the profits instead of the commissions. So
Right.
that was kind of how that transition. It took about 3.5, 4 years to figure that part of it out. But I was making good money as a real estate agent,
Right.
where I was comfortable there for a second, because after just working for $7 an hour bagging groceries, and you get a $30,000 commission check, you're like, oh, well, this ain't so bad, right? This is a lot better than where I just was. But so that was the actual progression to become a real estate investor.
So it sounds like your manager kind of introduced you to real estate, but he wasn't so much a mentor at the beginning.
Yeah. As soon as I left the store, I never really talked to him again. You know what I mean? But he definitely planted the seed that really sprouted into everything and sent me in a certain direction. And not only just sent me in a direction, but sent me in a direction with a certain level of confidence as well. Like, because everything else I had tried was like, when you go through those, if you've ever been to any of those multi-level marketing seminars,
Yeah.
they're selling lotions and potions and pills and stuff like that. And everyone just sounds like magical. Like this is the way I should go, or this is the industry I should be in.
Absolutely.
But then to quickly become disappointed and da da da. So when I saw somebody with tangible results in real estate, like I was like, okay, that makes sense. Yes. All right. I'm smart enough. I'm old enough. I get it. This is where I'm supposed to do it. If I need to go learn how to do something, if I'm going to sell something, let's sell something that pays a lot when you do. So I was kind of in real estate. Obviously, that's a big item. It was that or Lear jets, but I didn't know anything.
Gotcha.
Seemed more accessible.
So, what strategy did you use at the beginning to start building your portfolio?
Yeah. So the first one, I joined this program. They're not around anymore, but they had kind of like a buffet of strategies, and you'd meet in one place once a quarter in person. It was in Glendale, Arizona, and you just walk up and down the hallways of this hotel, and like you could just like pick. Like this was lease options, this was wholesaling, this was short selling. There's what the tax strategies, and then here's the creative strategies, and so you could just kind of like walk up and down and pick your course and kind of design your own curriculum. And at that time, having come out of the music business, not in great financial shape. I did have to file bankruptcy in 2001, right when I got out of the music business. And so I wasn't lendable, right? I couldn't go into a bank and get a loan. And although I had a few bucks on me, I didn't have enough to like just go down and put 20% down on property after property after property. And if I couldn't borrow the money, then I needed to pay cash for houses is what I was thinking. So I was just naturally attracted to a course that they had called Creative Acquisition Strategies.
Okay.
And it was this promise of where you could use terms to purchase properties. And so that one really resonated with me. And then, of course, wholesaling that course resonated with me because you didn't need any money to do those deals either.
Right.
So those were the two that I just immersed myself in. And my first transaction was a wholesale deal.
Okay.
And so I did that. And then I came across a person looking for another property to wholesale, and came across a guy that had 35 houses in Danville, Illinois.
Oh, wow.
And I was living in Palos Verdes, California at the time. I'd never even heard of Danville. But I was able to put a creative deal structure together for those 35. And that's where I really took off. And that's where I pursued creative financing, creative acquisitions to buy and hold as my primary investing strategy. And then whatever I came across that I didn't want, then I would just wholesale those. But that was like always an afterthought.
Gotcha. So fast forward, you're having some success in acquiring properties and building your portfolio. Where in this journey did you decide that you needed to share or would want to share your knowledge with people and become like a coach or a mentor to other people?
It started with a book. I don't know if you've ever heard of this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Have you heard of that book?
Nope, never heard of it.
Never heard of that book? So it started with there, and there were two things that I learned there. I was 36, 37 years old when I read that book.
Okay.
And there was two things. One was just this concept of passive income, right? I kind of knew what it was, but to be introduced to it, to pursue as an intention, like this is the actual goal, right? Like coming from the music business, I was just trying to get my bank account as big as I could get it. Right. This was a different type of goal, like this different definition of wealth. And so there was that. And then this whole rat race escape idea, like this formula, like you just need to get your passive income to exceed your monthly expenses and you are financially free.
Right.
Prior to that, financial freedom was I had $1 bazillion in the bank. That was financial freedom. But all of a sudden, this just seemed more accessible, right? It was like a formula. Like there was an actual path to follow, not just to make more. And I always thought like in 3.5 years, I was able to get my passive income to exceed my expenses and I was financially free. Now, I wasn't rich by any means, but I did not have to go to work. Right. And so I was like, okay, so yeah, I am technically financially free. And I would just think about that like, wow, if I didn't go through this hardship through the music business, I don't know if I would have ever learned this. I'd have never had a reason to. And so I'd always thought about that. Like, gosh, if they just tossed out that book, Catcher in the Rye, in my senior year in high school and replaced it with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, how different life would have been, not just for me, but for everybody in that graduating class.
Right.
And then you just kind of extrapolate that over every high school. And so that was kind of like, gosh, I would have never learned this. I wish they would have taught this to me sooner. So there was that little element, and there was a convergence of a few. The second one was that Mercedes had gotten pregnant, so we were going to have a son. And I didn't come from a wealthy family. I came from a bunch of civil servants. I got a bunch of police officers in my family, a bunch of firefighters, got a bunch of like civil engineers and people that worked in the aerospace industry, just very conservative, traditional 9-to-5 people.
Sure.
And so I didn't have like a parent to teach me how to run a business, how to create wealth or anything like that. And now that I was kind of doing it, I wanted to make sure that I passed that on to my son so he could be a little bit more of an advantage than I had.
Sure.
So there's that component. And then the third thing was, once I escaped the rat race with real estate, that I was started to explore the idea of diversification. And so I went to this one seminar. It was on membership websites. That's what the name of the seminar was.
Interesting.
And this was like a whole new idea. So I went to check it out. And the guy at the front of the room on the stage, he said, wealthy people, they get wealthy for this is how they get wealthy. They learn how to do something really, really well. And they create multiple streams of income based off of their knowledge.
Sure.
And the first place that anyone can go to is go look at how you can be a consultant or a teacher or an educator, a trainer, or a coach based off of what you've already accomplished in life. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I've accomplished this rat race escape thing. And I was feeling very proud of myself. Like, I was like, wow, I really am financially free, because I just came out of, 5 or 6 years before that were very stressful financially. And then obviously then came the pitch. And here's how you do it with today's technology: is you go and record videos based on what you know, and you put it behind this paywall, and you charge $97 a month and you put as many people as you can in there. I was like, done, sign me up. So that's what I did. So I think I put together like 8 videos. It was called the Epic Pro Academy, is what it was originally called.
Okay.
And I put these little 8 videos there, and I had the podcast. That's another story, but they kind of, all these things kind of can work together. And I would just say, hey, if you want to learn how to do real estate, you go to epicproacademy.com and sign up. And just from the podcast, as people did. And then, probably within 6 months, I had, I don't know, 300-400 people in there. So it's like $3-4 grand. I was like, wow, that was like equivalent to 10-15 more houses, And so that's kind of how the whole teaching thing came about. And it was just a lot of inquiries from your friends and your family. Like, Matt, you were just bagging groceries a few years ago, and now you're playing golf on a Tuesday. How'd you do that? So there's a lot of inquiries. Like, people wanted to take me to lunch and to coffee to pick my brain. And so just like kind of all those things, like, just pointed me towards teaching and educating.
Yeah, it's funny people do that, right? They're like, I want to be real rich, or I want to be wealthier, and I want freedom. And then you're like, how'd you do that? I've been with you side by side this whole time. I haven't seen anything different about you. How you do what I say I want to do, right? That's crazy.
Yep.
So you mentioned your podcast. One of the things I want to make sure, accolade, you have one of the longest running podcasts.
It is the longest running real estate one. Yep. We started in 2009. And when I'd tell people I had a podcast, they're like, what's that?
Yeah.
You had to explain to them to what it actually was. That's how long ago it was. And here we are, 2026, like what, 16 years now, which is crazy.
That's craziness. So kind of give people a little bit of what's what we're looking for, a nuggets of some of the stuff that they could learn from you if they were decided that they wanted. I mean, you have so much knowledge out there in your YouTube channel, podcast wise too. I know one of the first things after taking your course or coming into you in your live trainings was seeing your ROI matrix. That's something that a lot of people don't show, the different ways of making money just buying one purchase. Can you kind of elaborate on that? I like to try to make sure that I share as much knowledge as I can with my audience, and I got it from you, so why not get it straight from the horse's mouth?
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to a point, like, I am perceived as this real estate guy, right? But it's really just, once I learned all the different ways that real estate produces wealth and generates income and a return, I really kind of started to consider myself, I'm a money guy disguised as a real estate guy. Real estate is just the vehicle that go right back to the roots of what got me into real estate in the first place, that gives the average person a legitimate shot at creating real wealth.
Right.
When people are considering real estate as an investment, first of all, they think it's risky right away because they think the market's going to pop anytime and they think they're going to lose all of their money. So that's what the layman thinks. And then the next part is they just think about appreciation. How much is this house going to be worth in 30 years? Is this a good time to get in? Is the question that you hear all the time. It's always a good time to get in. And I think that window is closing. We can talk about that later, but I think it's becoming urgent to this point that you have to get in.
Sure.
But the appreciation, and then, so that's what, 3-4% a year. And people, why would you do real estate when my mutual fund gets 8 to 9% a year? But what they miss is the other profit centers of real estate. So you have the appreciation. Sure, you're getting 3.5%. But the way most people purchase properties with 20% down and they borrow the rest. So what that does to your appreciation or the return on your investment is it increases it by a factor of 5, right? If I buy a $100,000 house and I put $20,000 down, and that house is then worth $110,000 down the road. So people say that's a 10% return. But no, that's $10,000 return on my $20,000 I produced was actually a 50% return. So that's a big aspect of what's an unfair comparison between real estate and the stock market, because you can't really do that in the stock market. Right. And you can, but that's super risky, and people lose their ass overnight when they do it that way. That just takes an extra level of education. But then the second thing is through the cash flow, the income that it produces, right? So you get a return there, so you can get another anywhere from 5 to 15% just doing it conventionally. So there's another 5 to 15% on top of the appreciation part. And then you have the tax deductions and the depreciation there. That's typically another 4 to 5% a year. And then you have the amortization, which is the paying down of the debt. And this is the biggie. This is the one where if you have a rental property and a tenant is giving you money every month for their rent, you take that money that they give you and you pay your mortgage payment. That indirectly, that tenant is paying that house off for you. Indirectly, that tenant is buying the house for you. And so there's another amortization is going to be 3, 4, 5% a year. So collectively, I mean, it's not that difficult to get a 25% return every single year from one house. And there's just nowhere else that the average person can go out there and do that with that level of certainty and with that level of security and safety. So that's how I kind of I don't really consider myself a real estate guy anymore. I'm a money guy. I like the returns. And if something else comes along that produces something better than that, then I'm going to be that guy. But right now it's real estate, and it just always has been. And I just don't see that changing anytime soon.
Thanks for sharing. Mm-hmm. One thing that I know about you, and I'm not sure you call it yours or if it's your wife's, but you guys have, was it savvy? Real estate savvy?
Cash flow savvy.
Cash flow savvy. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I mean, that's a great program for people that may not want to do the typical fix and flip and all that kind of stuff. So
Totally. Like you, Jose, we met because you're a little bit more of a hands-on person and you want to go out there and do your deals on your own and be in control of that. And there's another side of the business where people, they want real estate, but they're a full-time something else, right? Maybe they don't want to get their hands dirty. Maybe they don't have the time to learn how. And so what they can do is they can just have somebody else go do it for them. And that's what my wife, Mercedes, does. She shows busy professionals how to build a real estate portfolio in their spare time so they can position themselves to retire early. And so that's what she does. So I'm kind of like, I'll do it with you and she'll do it for you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of make sure everyone understands, this is almost kind of like it's basically a turnkey. They identify the property for you. They'll fix it up for you. They could even get renters in there for you. You're just making the monetary investment, and at the end, you own this nice, pretty beau property.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to invest in the real estate without all the dirtiness because they do all the work for you. So exactly. And they make sure that you kind of get to choose because they, Matt and Mercedes, they they have a large influx of leads because they work their systems and processes that they share with their students. So,
Yep.
um, so you've been in real estate for a long time. Can you share with us, uh, one of your favorable memories of your journey, and then maybe one that's your biggest lesson learned because it didn't turn out so well for you?
Hmm. I guess there's multiple situations where people have just said, "Hey, you can just have the house, just take it,"
Sure.
right? And people can't believe that that actually happens, and it does happen regularly. Um, I mean, when everyone freaked out during COVID, right at the beginning of COVID, like within the first week of 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right?
Sure.
Within that first week, there are people just here, take it. I just bought it and I don't know what to do with it. I don't want to get stuck with it. Just take it, just take it. And I just took over the payments on a bunch of these properties. So there was that, those types of situations, or you talk to a seller on one house and he says, well, I don't, maybe this one isn't it, but I have this other thing for sale. And all of a sudden you stumbled into something really even better than what you were originally talking to. So those kind of good moments, they happen all the time. And that's what makes me kind of love this business and being willing to talk to anybody, because you just never know what's around the corner. Um, if you want to get ugly and stay in theme with the show, I got one of those too.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Yeah. This was at a moment where Mercedes and I, we probably owned about 50 single families. And we came across this one person and he said, hey, I've got this 40 unit building in Memphis. And do you want it? And I was like, well, that sounds cool. I could double my portfolio overnight. I could get 40 units and add it to my 50. And God, I have almost 100. And so we made some arrangements and it was good. It needed a bunch of work, but I was able to raise the money and buy this property that what seemed like just a steal. And, had thinking that I have 50 houses. What's 40 more underneath one roof? This should be easy.
Right.
So went forward with it and started to work on it. And gosh, I'm trying to figure out, do I make this a long story or short story? But basically the first because I'm just like, it's bringing back so many thoughts. I'm stumbling over my words right now. But basically the first contractor, well, there's a giveaway right there, the first one. So
Yeah.
the first contractor took all the money and just left, right? He did a little bit of work, a little bit of rehab, sent us some photographs, and the work was getting done. Everything was great, just enough for us to send him the next bulk of cash for him to keep going. And then that was the last we ever heard from him. And
Wow.
so I had to get on a plane. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. We flew to Memphis, and it was just a ghost town, and his office was completely cleaned out.
Wow.
And so I was like, wow, and I'm stuck with all of this investor money, and all these people trusted me. And at this point, I'd been had the podcast, and I had a little bit of a reputation. Like I'm the real estate guy. This doesn't happen to me.
Sure.
And so we've quickly found another contractor, and I sold like I don't know, half a dozen of my houses just to raise some capital to cover the losses. And then we went and did that, and God, that guy is, I think they went to the same contracting school together because he did the exact same thing. I mean, the end result was the same. It was a different chain of events, but the end result was basically the same. And so then I was just like, I had to like cut my losses, and I was able to sell it and break even enough I lost my ass, but I was able to get all my investors' money back. But that was like, okay, whew. All right, let me slow down for the next one, because up to that point, real estate had been pretty darn easy for me.
Sure.
Just everything worked. And then I got a taste of what the other side could look like. And that's kind of where I came up with my little saying all the time, where I was like, well, real estate's the easy part. It's the people that are risky.
Yep.
And so really with contractors and property managers, you have to do as much due diligence on those two people and those two team members as you do as the real estate themselves. And I know you have your ugly experiences too with contractors, Jose.
I was gonna say, you and I share that experience, and
yep,
you helped me get through mine too. So
yep, and the houses are just fine. The market is fine. Everything is great. The money, if you find a good deal, the money is easy to raise, and it's just easy to move forward and do exactly everything you want to do. But you have to incorporate other people in that process, and you got to be careful who you work with.
Absolutely. So you told us about your journey and some good and bad. I mean, what's some, as a educator, what are some words of wisdom that you would share with the audience? Um, I personally will, for those that are watching, Matt's a great wealth of knowledge. Like I said, he doesn't just stay on the same stuff he learned 5 years ago. He's constantly educating himself, learning stuff. And as soon as he learns something, if you go to his YouTube channel, you'll see that he's putting out maybe a 5 or 6 minute video of that new topic and how you should do your due diligence to understand why that one event or that one law or this change matters to you in the way you're trying to invest. So I'll give it back to you and share with the audience some nuggets that you would love for them to make sure that they're aware of when they're in this nasty game of real estate.
For sure. You know, as an educator and getting to work with a lot of new and aspiring real estate investors, you know, there's a certain percentage, I don't know what the percentage is, that becomes successful. There's another percentage that at least gets a deal or two done, right? And then there's another percentage that, you know, they just kind of disappear and never did anything, right? And didn't get the results. So I've just always been on a mission to, like, how can I close that gap? How can I bridge that gap between education and implementation and actually produce results for as many people as possible? And, you know, I kind of approached it. It's really a mental game to where, you know, if you've never been in real estate before, like, you just want the money and then you'll go do the things and that going to produce the money, but then you're not consistent or persistent with the things that you do, because really it comes down, it's incongruent with who you're being, right? So you have to kind of change yourself to real estate. And that was always kind of the thing, like, you know, we got to work more on the 6 inches between your ears than that real estate versus the actual real estate. Because that's really where the difference is made. Because, I mean, I could show you how to fill out the perfect purchase agreement, right? And I could show you that in 15, 20 minutes. But why you don't do it every single day, that's between your ears, right? That has to do with you personally. So I've always been bridging or looking at that. And then probably the last 18 months or so, I've kind of shifted. Okay, so we got that, and it's made an impact on a certain number of people. And I'm really proud of the success that we have and the results that I get with my students. But the other part, I started thinking about it, like, there's a million ways to make $1 million in real estate. Yep. You just got to choose one. Yep. And they all work. So there's the big hurdle for people to get over, because they'll try one. Didn't get the results in 3 or 4 weeks, so they go try another thing. They tried that for 3 or 4 weeks. I'm not rich yet, so I'm gonna go try something else 3 or 4 weeks. And then they watch a video and they think I should go do that, or they hear about a friend doing it this way, so I'm gonna go do that. And they just never stick with anything long enough. But they all work. You just gotta pick one and dive in. So how do you know which one to pick? That's the big question. So what I started doing was, let's not try to change you so much for real estate. Let's change real estate for you. Let's decide, what are your strengths? What are your preferences? You know, what are your inclinations, and, you know, what are your habits, and what's your personality like, and what are your tendencies? And let's go pick out the strategy that aligns with who you are already. At least get it as close to you as possible, so the amount of change and work you have to do on yourself is minimal. So that's been a big part of how my training and education has evolved over this last year and a half. But the general idea there is just to focus on one thing. You want to focus on one market, one investing strategy, one lead source, one one conversion method, and make a 1-year commitment. If everyone does that, then there's no reason why everyone listening can't succeed.
You know, it's funny. When I first became one of your students, there's a story that you shared, and I loved it because it really puts everything in perspective. You said you had 2 students. One was in, let's say, market A, another one was in market B. And student market A was like, I can't. You always teach everybody to kind of like start in their backyard. Like, I can't make any money here. This is a horrible market. I can't do nothing. You're like, okay, fine. You get your student in market B decides that they want to invest and do their real estate investing in market A, and he's killing it.
Yep.
He's making money hand over fist. And, you know, you share that, like, how is it that this person that's not even in your market is making money in your market, but you can't? Right. So I always
everyone thinks their market is really competitive. Everyone thinks their market is saturated. and you think your market is saturated, you're trying to go somewhere else, and just realize that someone in another market is looking at your market like you got all the low-hanging fruit right under your feet.
Yeah.
And so it's not the market that makes the investor, it's the investor that makes the market. And if you're just, here's how you beat your competition. First, when the phone rings, pick it up. Okay, that's the first thing, because you've already beaten half your competition already just by focusing on that one thing. And then two is just be consistent and persistent with your money-making activities, and particularly your follow-up, because it takes about 8 contacts to close the deal, and most people give up after 1 or 2. So right there, I think the stat, I've reverse engineered all of these statistics, and I think it's about 92% of all the deals in the market go to just 6 or 7% of the operators that are in that market.
Yeah.
Because that 92% of all of you, that those people that you perceive as your competition, they gave up. They gave up an eventual yes. So it's really easy to beat once you recognize how lazy and inconsistent the human condition is, right? Once you realize that, then like you don't have any competition. You just got to pick up the phone and keep doing it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I took. Another lesson that you taught me was consistency. Utilizing your daily navigator and documenting the action, my money making actions, I guess you can call it, per day. I could see where my shortfalls were and where my weaknesses were that I needed to strengthen up. So when I wasn't reaching my KPIs or my goals for the month or the week, I could look back at those sheets and say, well, you're not putting the work in,
Mm-hmm.
It's very telling when you say, well, I didn't get a deal, I haven't got a contract. I'm like, well, let's see your sheets. Let's see what you've been doing, the last week or 2 weeks. And then oh, well, never mind. I don't want to show you those because it tells the story. So
yeah,
very, very, truth in the pudding, or whatever that saying is, because proof is in the pudding. That's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
That consistency is key in this business, and the more you're consistent in follow up, a lot of people don't do follow up. So the more you do those, the more successful that you'll be. That's one of the lessons I did take from you. So you've shared what you bring to the table. What is it, something that somebody can help you with? What are you looking for? What are you needing right now in your business, your career, your investing?
I am in the process of liquidating my portfolio all through the Midwest and the South, and bringing it to Las Vegas, where I live.
Okay.
And so I'm basically redeploying everything. So I'm looking for, and I'm on the mad hunt for any seller finance deals inside of Las Vegas. So that's where my focus really is. And, during COVID, we had this big giant live event education training business. And, it was probably, I started that in the end of 2019, which is probably the worst time in history to have made that move. Because as soon as they
now
closed,
looking back, that, right?
yeah, at the time it was like, yeah, it was like, this is a surefire business model that so many people have done. And I was like, I can do it better. And I think I would have done it better if had COVID not come along. But what that did is, in order for me to maintain my staff and keep everything running, I had to sell a lot of assets, right? I had to sell a lot of houses to keep the lights on and keep payroll flourished, and made sure I held on to everybody. And so now I kind of have to get back into the streets and replenish some things that I had to give up.
Sure.
And so I just kind of took that as an opportunity. Let's just change the whole portfolio. Let's just kind of dive in and kind of redesign the whole thing and try to make it as stress-free and easy to operate as possible, knowing what I know now.
Sure.
So that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm bringing all of my investments, what I have left, here to Las Vegas, and probably spend the next 18 to 24 months acquiring as much as I possibly can. And so yeah, if you got a seller finance deal in Las Vegas and it cash flows, I'm all in.
I might need to call you after this meeting. I've been looking in Vegas. There's a wholesaler over there that I've been working with, and she's an agent as well.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can actually finally do some deals together.
Perfect.
It's funny you started bringing up. Would you say just a second ago? It was now is the time to kind of start acquiring, and you alluded to it that you kind of hit on that toward the end. You mind sharing that info now?
Sure. I think within 10 years we will be a nation of renters.
Yeah.
I really do. And either you're going to be paying rent or you're going to be collecting it. And the market may hit some speed bumps up and down between now and then. It certainly will. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months, but I'd be willing to bet everything on what's going to happen in the next 10 years. Sure. I think houses will be worth twice as much as they are now. I think they'll be basically unaffordable for 99% of the population, but all of those people are still going to need a roof over their head.
Absolutely.
And so they're going to have to pay somebody for that roof, whether they own it or they rent it. They're going to be paying somebody, and I just want to be on the right side of that equation. But the reason I say that, and I can say that with so much confidence, is just the imbalance of supply and demand. Like, we just have more people than we have houses right now. And we've been on a 10-year, almost a 15-year deficit now in building. We have not built enough to keep up with the new housing formations, right? The new houses being put together. And we'd have to build, 2 million, 3 million houses a year for the next decade just to catch up, to get back to normal. And I just don't see that happening. It's just not going to happen. But that's just the people, right? Then there's another aspect of that, the age of the people, the demographic of the people, right? Millennials, I think their peak age right now of the millennial population is 34 years old, 33, 34 years old. And the average age of the first-time home buyer is 36. So you're going to see over the next 2-3 years more demand for housing than we've ever seen in the history of the country. So that's here right now. They're already born. They're already walking. They just have to wait for them to grow up, right?
Sure.
So there's that. And then the other part that we've never seen before is the amount of corporate demand. So the corporations are buying the houses up. So now we have additional demand when we already are at a deficit just for the people that are here. But then you got all the corporations buying. So, they say a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
And that tide is rising, and it's rising really fast. So you don't have to be, if you're not noticing that, then you got your head buried in the sand. And so my goal is just to have as many boats in the water as possible and let the tide lift them up. Let the tide rise. Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, it's been over 3 years, going on 4 now, that we've known each other. I've gotten so much knowledge from you. There's a lot of success that I've had in my career because of the nuggets that I've gotten from you. So if people wanted to try to take advantage of your free knowledge that you share, can you share with them your social medias, like your Instagram, stuff like that?
Sure. Well, I've got the Epic Real Estate podcast. So if you go to epicrealestateinvesting.com, that'll take you right to the iTunes feed. Then I've got the YouTube channel, which has become probably a little bit more popular than the podcast now, and that's at Epic Real Estate there. So those, as far as social media, that's the 2 places I'm at. I'm almost never on Facebook. Instagram, they keep taking my account away from me because I don't know why. They don't tell me. So I don't really spend a whole lot of time there. And I got a bunch of, 40, 50,000 people over at TikTok on accident. But I spend all my time and attention is on YouTube and the podcast.
Awesome. Well, everyone will have that information for you in the description. Matt, thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it. I can't even tell you enough on how much you've helped me in my career and being successful real estate investor. That's why I keep coming back on our weekly calls, because I know there's always going to be some nugget that you drop that I was like, where does he come up with this stuff? And I just look forward to that new nugget so I can apply that to my business, because I know whatever it is going to be money making. So thank you so much for your time. And to you out there in the YouTube world, we'll see you in the next episode.
Congratulations on show number 30.
Woohoo! Thanks.
See ya.